I am Joshua K. Sabra, Esquire, and he is Dr. Miles Salisbury. And you are listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, where we share tactics, techniques, and protocol to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while you walk the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. Today on the Miles Ahead podcast, Phil Horning joins us to discuss the default American values that are given us and how to define our own values for ourselves. Also, how darkness feeds our intention and purpose for our lives, and the difficulty in forging your own purpose, mission, and values that all men face. Stay tuned. And we're back. Live on the Miles Ahead podcast with Dr. Miles Salisbury and your co-host Josh, and we have a guest today that we'll be introducing here shortly, Phil. I'm really excited to learn more about you, Phil. We've been having a good time this morning chatting.
Phil Horning, get his last name in there.
Wow, that's exciting. That sounds like a news anchor.
It does. The weather report tonight by Phil Horning.
I kind of want to make a joke, but it sounds too grand.
Oh, you heard him in high school, he already said. So.
Oh, I'm damn. What are you listening to, Miles?
Rammstein, Ich will, the song. Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, it's off the album Mutter, Mother.
Did they keep making music after 1999?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Shortly thereafter, I think maybe they have something recent. I don't know, but about that time was their peak. Yeah, I'd say.
So good. Du hast. That was on TV.
Du hast mich.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool.
What you got?
I'm listening to Bill Withers again. Lovely Day, Changes. Lots of just going through the emotional hangover of doing new things and changing up of routines, and all good stuff. Just feeling change. So loving it.
Good song.
Loving it. Phil, what are you listening to?
You know, lately, I've been listening to this artist called Nefex, and he's a newer artist that's been out there, I guess, for a few years, but he's kind of becoming more onto the board. A lot of about pursuing things in life. He himself is trying to pursue more of that musical career, but a lot of his songs is finding purpose, passion, all through kind of a rock, punk, and a little touch of EDM to it, but it's got a nice beat, but also the lyrics are really good to it. So it's been something I've been enjoying more recently. But thanks for having me on the show here.
Of course.
It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're walking the path of a warrior, so you belong. That's for sure. The band is Nefex.
Nefex. Neffex, I believe, or there might be another E. You're asking the wrong person on spelling here, but
Miss Dr. Google.
But yeah, no, he's got a lot of great songs about getting through life. He's gone through tough times that he sings about, lonely times. And then even one of his songs that comes to my mind right now is Give Me a Sign. And that's just about talking about that life will be all right. Give me a sign. Really good listen. Yeah. If you're in that kind of music. So
we'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, to check it out. I'm excited. I get a lot of inspiration. I think my phone hears what we're talking about, and I go through Spotify to post our stuff, and yeah, I'm getting an ever expanding list of music.
The algorithm is changing on you.
That's why I'm going through changes.
Oh, zing!
Keeps coming back. So, Phil, I bet you're wondering why we called you here, and it's because we wanted to learn more about you. And you and Miles met in Connor Beaton's in-person retreat not too long ago, right?
That's right, back in March. So just a couple months ago. It was a great time, great experience. So, I think going into that, being able to connect with other people, other men, when you're open like that and being witnessed through the hard times and the things that you've had and that you've been keeping away from others in your life, It's crazy how you can do that almost with strangers
In like
and then
4 days. Yeah.
and then become so connected with others. It's such a thing I miss in society right now.
I think all men are craving it.
We are.
Mm-hmm. You're getting your squad, your tribe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. The things that you're actively trying not to share about yourself are the things that you find the greatest connection with other humans, other men. Why is that, Miles? You're the expert. Why do we connect so much on those painful points in our lives?
For men in particular, or for humans?
For anyone.
I don't know. I think maybe we go back to survival bias towards the negative. Like you hear somebody got hurt or died and you want to know why. Even though you don't want to ask them, it's like, why? Because I'm going to look out for myself, like, so I can avoid it too. There's some like community protection around it. We should ask an evolutionary psychologist. They probably know the answer, but that's my first thought, best thought. And then it probably bonds us as a community healing, coming together. We're wired that way to help each other. If you think about like the military, that's one of the only examples where somebody would willingly die for a stranger just because they're wearing the American flag on their sleeve, and it's just built in, they'll just do that, a sacrifice, because they know that someone will probably do it for them.
Well, I love that, the survivor bias, the, evolutionary aspect of it, and the loyalty. I also think like it's very, some parts of our lives where we're in the most pain feel very isolating. Like when we get exiled from a friend group, or our parents separate, or we go through a break, something like that we would consider like not what we wanted to have happened, and maybe that we weren't prepared for. It's like there's a component of shame involved, and it's like it's very isolating.
Yep.
And as soon as you hear other people having that similar experience, you're like,
there you go.
Oh,
I'm not alone.
Wait a second.
Yep. No. It's a human phenomenon.
So you guys connected at the retreat and kept the conversation going. So yeah, and you're actually involved in this work. You just started a coaching program, but give us the bio. Who are you, Phil?
Origin story.
Who is Phil Horning? Not a news anchor.
He's a weatherman.
A little bit of, I'll try to do the background, the life in a shorter span, but I know growing up in my life, as you guys were talking about shame, and also even a little bit of belonging, abandonment, those different things that as you go through in life and the trauma that we experience, my life wasn't, too dissimilar. Though I didn't have severe trauma as a kid or anything. I actually had a pretty good, life growing up as a kid. But a lot of things come very quickly in my life that came together in pairs. When I was about 13, parents had a pretty nasty divorce. Dad was caught cheating. And then that ended pretty abruptly. A lot of change in life. In that time too, when you're 13, you're just figuring out who you are, just starting to see what your identity is, and really formative years on that. And right after that, I wouldn't even say, probably about 6 months, my brother tells my mom, and he's only a couple years older than I was at that point. So at this time, I think I was 14, he was 17. He was about just a little over 2 years older. And he says, Mom, my girlfriend's pregnant. And I mean, coming in twos within less than a year is something that seems to happen a lot in my life for things, even though it's not the worst of things, but it's significant for something to change in life, and not all different from others though out there. And so a lot of interruption happened, development, identity was basically just stopped for me.
For both of you guys.
For a lot of people, yeah, and my family, everybody's. And from that basis, it took me a long time to learn and rediscover who I was, my passion, my purpose.
And Dad was sort of distant at this time when you needed that figure.
Yeah, the time of when it, especially in a male's life, a young male's life, needs a dad is when they are going through these more formative years for identity, for self, developing more into their real masculine side. And those qualities were a miss. He was a lot more out of the picture. We lived with my mom. And even then, the couple times I would see him maybe a month for a few hours, that was it. And it wasn't development into that. I didn't learn that many lessons or anything.
I imagine attention was even more off you because now, the brother needs help. Mom's like, I've got to jump in and be mom, dad, grandma.
Yeah.
And by the way, Phil just
all of that.
Figure it out, I guess.
And yeah, I mean, I was left a lot, not on any, malicious intent, but left a lot to my own development.
Yeah.
And to figure it out, to navigate, at that time, navigating yourself, women, trying to understand that, dating.
Puberty.
Yeah. So for a long time, even after that, I fell into that trap. It took a long time to develop myself, to find my purpose, my passion, my way through life.
Wait, what was the trap? You said you fell into that trap?
Of what Miles was talking about, just like, of basically not having an identity, really not having to self-parent.
No mentor, no guide.
Yeah.
Mom tried as best she could. Dad was not there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
brother maybe helped a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, it was tough. But
then you were a older uncle, brother, father figure to your nephew.
That's right. He lived with us for some time here. He lived with my brother and I and my mom for a couple years. And, hearing his cries when you're 15 years old and in the house, and
wild.
It's crazy for the instincts you start to develop because you
changing diapers already.
Yeah. Helping with some of that, just helping with a little bit of babysitting here and there. Being raised along with him on that. So
you guys got really close.
Yeah, very close. And basically like a little brother in a way. And just some of those aspects. And he was a very close individual with me. And a lot of reason of what I had put my purpose as a part of. I remember in my life going through college, going through the things, I remember said, I'm doing it for my nephew. I'm doing it for him because he was the thing that I aligned more things to in my life. And it was something that, because I didn't have something for myself as much to attach to, and I didn't know what to say, hey, I need to live for, he was.
Mm-hmm. So you had this sort of built-in service aspect for your family because you had a child. And one of the things that living with, a very young father and a young baby and a young grandma, you get to the sense of how fragile the ecosystem really is. You're talking about roles in the family that are one deep if there's anyone in that role. And so you got a sense of, okay, it's an all hands on deck kind of family. And you should be able to contribute something.
Yeah. I mean, when you have that young of a family, that young of a father to a son and grandmother, you miss out on a lot of the more patriarchy side, but a healthy side of the patriarchy on to help balance some things.
Yep. And no one's really mentoring you or your brother on what that's supposed to look like.
Right. Or a very distant one, I should say.
Yeah.
Very distant.
He'd come in and come out kind of.
Yeah. You know, and I mean, I don't tell this story to say, you know, this is a story that really, I see a lot of people say, you know, oh, my parents got divorced. That's not a big deal as somebody who had more significant trauma in their childhood.
Yeah, it's relative.
A realization I came through, it's like, no, these things that happen in our lives, whether it's one big event or couple or
death by 1,000 traumas.
Death by 1,000 traumas, or even small to medium-sized traumas, you could even call them.
Micro traumas. Yeah.
Build up in life.
They do.
And they should never be discredited.
No, it's all relative. Pain is pain.
You didn't have it as bad as I had it. Yeah. We didn't have any frosted flakes.
Trauma scoreboarding. Yeah.
That's nonsense. I think that I'm really curious as to where you both were very in alignment with this idea of the trap of self-parenting, and then where that ends for you, because you go through this early stage of high school where you self-disclose not a great student, and go to college, make it work, go into working a job, and you're in the process of, I don't even know if you're looking for yourself at this time. You're just doing what you're supposed to do, because in your mind, you might not have a vision for your life, but one of the roles that you want to play is an impact player for your nephew and your brother, and you have a role to play in the family still. This sort of, I'm gonna call it a blank slate. You guys called it self-parenting. Self-parenting trap opens up. How long before it, or how many years do you go before you feel like you have a sense of what your own vision for your life is? Where do you start to get clarity on like when the chapter that you specifically are writing, when does that begin?
For myself, it was actually back in college, when I started to, when I was separated from that environment, when I was forced into a completely new place. You have to find yourself. I mean, unless you already had the identity of, I'm an academic, I'm this, I'm that, but there's almost a second coming that you need to have too. From where you had from your parents or whatever you had in your past life to now, maybe I need to form a new identity of who I really am. That could be in college or afterwards, but mine first identity got formed more into college, of where I was coming more into realization of, I really enjoy working with people, leadership, those kinds of components, not realizing, and this is, something that directness, the assertiveness and the leadership that kind of comes from more of a masculine side. Not saying that it was missing from completely, but the qualities that you would be taught more from a father, I didn't realize that were there, that I had to form for myself. And through reading books, some self-discovery and things that came into life, synchronicities.
Sorry,
as you can
grammar
tell, spelling.
Nazi here.
No, my spelling, as you can tell earlier, and grammar is always a little off. And anybody that knows me, always suffered through that. And that's actually a big thing through my life was that.
Really?
I always overthink words.
Oh, interesting.
I will visualize the word and flip things in the word itself before I say it.
Interesting.
So, like, when you say, what was it? Prevalent, I would say prevalent.
Prevalent.
Yeah. I still catch myself doing that. But that's because I keep thinking flipped words inside of it.
Interesting.
Yeah. But
a lot of words that are very technical or very specific or doctrinal, which is like to the way that your job is done, is the way that the Army would say it. You read them, but you don't speak them very often to other people. and I'm pretty much getting corrected on enunciation all the time. My girlfriend's a proofreader,
Oh,
so
God.
she's constantly, yeah, exactly. That is a knowing laugh from someone who she's constantly like, I think what you meant to say was,
Yeah.
and
It's
she's
not-
right, because I read these in books and apply them, but unless someone has spoken it to me, I just make up the enunciation. I'm just like, oh, that's what it sounds like. So
It's not a fake aid, it's a facade. It's not a caveat, it's a caveat.
That is totally me. But you know what? I embrace it.
Yeah.
And, correct me, of course. I will never take offense to it, but it is something I laugh at a lot when I catch myself too. And it's just something we have to come to terms with ourselves is what is our little
We all got something like this.
thing? Yeah. What do we need to laugh at ourselves too in life?
Mm-hmm.
That we can't miss.
Mm-hmm. That's a good
Can't
way
be
to
hard on ourselves.
So
But
you're in school and you start to notice that the healthy masculinity. I think like in a country that is completely bereft of healthy masculinity today, the biggest, most obvious healthy, you said assertiveness. I just say a healthy boundary, like an inassailable boundary from a masculine energy is just, hey, you're not wrong for challenging my boundary, but I'm not going to, I'm not going
Relent.
to acquiesce. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that energy is certainly missing in so many aspects of our lives. I say our as a society in America. And so you're noticing that, to be a leader, you have to guide, and to guide, you have to have solid boundaries, because otherwise you're too integrated and you cannot push water where it belongs. And you felt that in college.
no, and that's a great way to put it. When I say assertiveness, I absolutely mean boundaries for yourself.
Mm.
It took a longer time than just college to learn how to enforce some boundaries and what really is my core values and that kind of thing and what I really seek. But it was the start. And it takes a lot of time, and especially things that when your life is in a lot of flux, it delays things.
Mm-hmm.
If you just had 6 months concentrated day after day to focus on these different things of life, of thinking about what is this? What is my self? What is my boundaries? What are the things I need to work on? You probably will come out pretty well than most people spend 5 years, but we usually don't have a concentrated 6 months to do that. Life comes in. We have responsibilities. That's a part of it. We can't forget that either. Things happen. So it takes time. And that's one thing I know I'm going on a different track here, but just wanted to take a quick note is that for those who are out there working on yourselves, keep going. Even though life interrupts, things come up, just keep working on yourself. Keep discovering. Take the time that you need. We can't go into the forest like certain authors and live out there.
I mean, you
could, and do self-discovery for a few years and come back a completely changed man. Not all of us can do that.
Gesundheit.
I might
Bless you.
pick that up.
But we have to keep moving forward. We have responsibilities in our lives here, family, all of that we need to take care of. So, but I know in my journey, continuing from college, there was, right after college, you come into that of where do I go? And so another pause happened there with just figuring out life, figuring out what jobs I'm going to get into,
Trying shit out.
all of that. And then zoom forward to probably a couple years ago. Actually, probably a little bit longer now. It's 2024, 3 years ago. So right after pandemic, I had some things formed just before that interruption happened.
Some things formed.
Around coaching myself, where I wanted to go, what kind of work I wanted to do and helping people, but I didn't have the full vision formed yet.
Mm-hmm.
But zoom forward to, I believe, right around 2021, that's where I was able to solidify things a lot more into both who I am, where I'm going in my vision, and setting a grounding.
And wanting to help people, it sounds like.
And wanting to
And
help
men
people.
especially.
Absolutely. And it was both from, at that time, I went down to Sedona, Arizona, and I saw what they called a dark light shaman.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Well, that's the place to do it.
Yeah. And
yeah.
well,
you can fart and hit a shaman down there.
and while, it was for me a little outside of the realm, but I was curious.
Yeah.
For me, it's that woo-woo side, a little bit too on the side when he was going into that. But he seemed, when I met him, he actually seemed pretty, not into the crazy side of things, but more of where I was and where the kind of person I needed to talk to. And there wasn't any drugs or any hallucinogens involved, but he took me through a meditation, a very deep meditation. And from there, he just had me vision stepping through a door, looking through my life and saying, where is it that you want to go? And that yourself from wherever future, 10 years from now, whatever that is, comes and grabs you, puts his arm around you and walks you through his life.
This was a formative experience for you.
This is an extremely formative experience. I had all the elements there. This just glued a lot of them together.
Yeah, he helped you piece them together.
Yeah. And that's one component too to think about.
Briefly explain what that looked like and what you went through and what you saw.
Yeah.
Because you've told me this before. It's a really pertinent story.
Yeah. And so going back to that story, this person that came and got me was myself, but a little bit more, athletic build, a little bit more, just slightly, just kind of the things I want in life. But the energy of him was this strong, grounded, but supportive energy.
Masculine.
Very masculine.
Probably craving it.
Not brutal, not aggressive.
Balanced.
Very balanced. Capable of expressing emotion as needed and when needed.
What boy or guy doesn't want that didn't have that growing up, right?
Right.
That's what's so healing about these experiences. Same with like at Connor's retreat. We got that in spades with him and with Michael and Casey.
Being in that presence. And it was very similar to that kind of level of this man that came in and put his arm around me. That was me in the future. And he walked me through. And the first scene I remember looking at was these really tall pine trees in the background. It was this open land.
Kind of like Oregon, right?
Yeah, kind of like Oregon. Very green.
Gonna get you to move here.
By the way, if you didn't know, I'm from Colorado and been there most of my life, which has a little less greenery. But it is crazy as I've been up here and seeing all these tall lodge kind of based pine trees. Was very similar to what I experienced, and I've never seen this here.
Speaking of synchronicity,
until I just came here this week, and which is why it's so crazy that the vision was like that. But out in this kind of open area, I saw a group of guys around a fire pit. We're all in chairs.
Your squad,
yeah, squad, and it was all of the guys that I wanted in a men's group, just good guys themselves, grounded into themselves there. And, as my higher version of myself, I will call him, another flash of himself, not the guy that was guiding me, but him was there around the fire too. And he had his daughter in his arms holding her.
This was you?
This was me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see two versions. One's the guide, one's the person showing me.
Ah, I got you.
Yeah.
And you saw yourself holding two daughters.
Having two daughters. One was in my arms.
One was your arms.
Yeah.
It probably felt really good.
And then it did. Warm. She was asleep because she was comforted, felt protected.
And you saw your sort of fuzzy version of your future wife in a way too, right?
When we got to the house, yeah. He walked me through the house. And that's where I saw my other daughter, younger daughter too. It was crazy how vivid this was, by the way. And I did see my wife, and I couldn't quite see the face. That was the only part that was a little blurred out, but you could feel the presence.
What did it feel
warm,
like?
very warm, nurturing, kind, caring individual very much into their own qualities of self.
I'm wondering,
Very
I
well.
always think of Jung and the anima and animus, and I wonder if that's what these parts of you were speaking to, of like what entails healing around that, what you want, what would help you. And you, like you said, your higher self is sort of giving that projective of like, this is the North Star. This is what I want, or where I need healing around, whatever the message was. That's what's so cool about these journeys and meditations.
And I very much see that of, what we also seek in life.
Yeah.
Our partners.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it was such a vivid thing, was seeing in that feeling, and those qualities like you were talking about were coming through, being felt. A lot of things in this journey, while visual, was also very much emotional and deep connected feelings that you feel when like you're close to someone.
That's the point. Yeah.
And that's what it was. And as he walked me through the house, he was showing me all the work I've done to help others. All the work that was like on the wall was a smattering of photos and certificates and things like that around coaching and helping others, and just genuine, good, like people feeling good about themselves. That's what you got from the photo when you looked at it. Like, it wasn't a fake smile. It was a genuine, taking me through the office, through the house, all of that I was seeing there, seeing photos of the family, of course. And, to sum up that journey, he took me back to the door, and my guide, the shaman, was saying, and then he's going to tell you, anytime you need to come back here and look at this, I will be here. With myself telling me that. Anytime you need to step through this door, it is here. And you will come to this door in your life and stay.
So that's been, so that drew you into, okay, I really want to do work around men's work and coaching. You go for it.
Well, what was your initial response to that experience? And then now, looking back on it 3 years later, how do you still have the same response? And how has it changed?
Good question.
Great question. My initial response was I basically cried right after that. He brought me back, and it was just tears flowing down my face. And it was so powerful because it did piece a lot of the elements in my life that were, quote, missing too, but also elements in my life that just felt it was where I needed to go. It pieced together everything I've been thinking about and wanting to go where I wanted to be in life. And not all the other crap that is out there from other people's visions, other people's pushes onto you. It was genuinely my own. And now when I look back at it, I still see the exact same image. I step through that same door whenever I need to. It has been with me for these past 3 years.
So what you got from it, just to clarify, I would have been terrified. 2 daughters? Jesus.
I'm living that.
But what you got from it was a sense of home and a sense of fulfillment and peace, and a sense of stepping into a role and a part of you, your personhood that you had been missing or wanting and desiring, and it seemed there that you could live into it, and that comforted you, and it gave you a sense of continuity in terms of I'm moving in the right direction, and this is building to something.
I would add on to that, yes, all that, of course, but to add on to it, it gave me a sense of a foundation upon which I need to build. It gave me the blueprints of how I needed to ground myself. It gave me all of those things that I needed to know of. I need to start building towards this life, because a basis of the coaching I am getting into is let us build your foundation, so that way you can build the structure to reach to the point of where you see in your life. And we all have to start with a sense of grounding, and to build a solid foundation. And where we build it, we have to understand first and foremost.
I have more questions, but Miles, you wanted to take it somewhere?
No, I'm just, you're kind of already going there. This is leading into, okay, I want to work with men and heal men and do coaching. And so I don't know if you're wanting to keep going at the end of where you're at. I'm trying to.
What do you
Go
mean by
next up.
ground? You've said that a couple times today. What do you mean by grounding? Like you've foundation, grounding foundation, deeper foundation, solid cornerstone. Okay, I get it. You want to build a house. What does that mean to you?
And that's what you call your coaching program, right? Grounded Warrior.
Grounded Warrior.
Yeah. So let's get into that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is because there's two elements to the coaching program: grounding and foundation, however you want to call it, but they are to me one and the same. To build it, you have to have a few different elements that you need to figure out for yourself. First off, you need to understand, what are my core values? Who am I? Am I an honest person? Am I a man of integrity? Do I set myself of how I need to for my boundaries? You need to figure out the qualities you want to have and what is key to you. And usually those are the qualities we find ourselves missing the most in life. That's one part. The second is to find a purpose. Now, of course, that is a word that is overused a lot, is, what is my purpose? What is that?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
But a purpose doesn't have to be a certain thing or career. I think it get mixed up way too much to try to tie it to a thing. This is something that Dan Millman gets into about identity. So to me, purpose and identity can be very similar too, because we say, oh, my purpose is to be a firefighter. Well, if that is everything, and when that's gone,
Who are you?
who are you? What are you? But your purpose needs to be more grounded into, what do I give to the world?
That's the distinction. Okay. Good distinction.
What is it that I was put here? However you think, whatever you think,
What
on
wants to come
religious
through
or
me, yeah.
spiritual levels, or even non.
Yeah.
What gifts do I have? Because we do have gifts naturally,
All of
and
us.
ones that we need to develop that just are waiting to be awakened.
Or they're in the shadow, the golden shadow.
Exactly. That need to be discovered, that are there, that we need to give. So that's another component, is finding that.
Love it.
And then
So
the third,
this is tying into what it means to you to be grounded.
yes,
Is understanding your values, understanding your purpose, or your gifts and contribution, your basically what Mark Manson calls is defining your value to the world.
And there's one more, and that is finding your vision. You can't build a foundation without a blueprint of where you want to go. And while sometimes it may seem contradictory, because maybe we don't know our purpose, well, your purpose at that point is to find your purpose.
Ah, yes.
Simple statement. I heard it from,
It's a great one.
I can't remember which author, but it is the best quote for when you feel like you don't have a purpose. You do. Everybody has one. And if you don't know exactly what it is, yours is to go and find it, try things. I have a whole thing I've developed that will come out shortly too about discovering your purpose. There's some free resources about discovering your purpose as well on my website.
We'll link to it.
Yeah. And there's a few different areas you can find it. Your past, what things as a child did you love doing? But sift it down. Don't just do the thing. What was it based around the things? What do you enjoy now or naturally feel you're tended towards? And then also the third is, what does your heart kind of tug you towards? That real inner voice inside of you. I like threes, if you haven't noticed.
Three's my lucky number. I love it.
Three's a great way to break things down. But
So when you're,
two's a coincidence, three's a pattern.
there we go.
Yeah.
So when you're working with your clients, do you call them clients?
Yeah.
This is kind of like not like the groundwork that you will do with them is helping them find these three things.
Yes.
And then whatever tangents from that. Okay.
A lot of times when I work with clients, I usually, well, not a lot of times, that's what I do with clients too, is get a baseline of who they are now, maybe dig a little bit into the past. I don't go so far into shadow work and past trauma work,
But it's part of that blueprint.
but you do have to understand it. And if they got to a good point. But once they're ready and have a good basis,
Before
or
you send
or
it to
even
me.
during that work is actually a perfect time to start looking into yourself as you're uncovering these things. You need to start pulling it into who you are now as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're talking about the golden shadow,
Mm-hmm.
the qualities you need to make sure you pull into who you are in your core.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is where I start with clients is let's figure this out.
And then you're getting this up and going, and then darkness had some more lessons for you.
That it did. So a little over a year ago, January 2023, I deployed Phil Horning men's coach. Very just, push off kind of platform. Did a lot of short form videos. Instagram was my use. And went for that for about 9 months. Had a few different clients.
Good amount of followers.
Yeah, but I came to a realization even about 6 months in, I don't want this to be just me. I can't just use just my name. It was just a way to get it out there, myself out there, but realized this was going to be a much bigger thing that I wanted to help more encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't just put my name on it or use my name as the title because it wanted it to be a thing of its own that it grows. And so I came up with the name Grounded Warrior, a little bit of a play on Dan Millman's Peaceful Warrior.
Yeah.
But I liked the elements of the groundedness, and that's where I found myself, my own grounding.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it takes both to be a warrior, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit, but also somebody who's grounded into it and both in life to pursue into the things we need to. And so that's where I developed this and shifted towards into that. So I put a stop to Phil Horning's men's coach, shifted into that new title, started to deploy it. And then unfortunately, a lot of things did happen back in December and January, where at that point, a longer term girlfriend for me, about a year, suddenly ended. Things ended quite abruptly there. And then a month right after that, literally to the day, 7th to the 7th. So January 7th, found out my nephew took his own life. He was 19. The whole world. And one of the premises of why I started men's coaching was because I did look at his life too and said, I don't want him to grow up in a world where so many men were suffering like this. I did not know he was suffering like this, but I wanted to help those around him to change a little bit of that into who I thought he was.
Mm-hmm. It's super important because, we don't know how many men are suffering in silence, and you didn't know it wasn't obvious at all that he was suffering.
And we shared a lot of things together. He would talk to me, of course, on levels he couldn't talk to his mom or his dad about. We'd get lunch every so often here and there and talk very deep subjects, his purpose in life, his vision. And it seemed like he was so clear from what he told me. I mean, at the time when we were getting lunch, 17, 18-year-old.
Had some ideas.
He had ideas of where he wanted to go. And he would speak to me like on our level about life. He would even give me advice about women. And it's just, he was such a great kid.
Did you tell him? You should have told him how to get 4 prom dates. He's trying to give you advice. Like, listen here, son. This is before social media.
Right. High school was wild for me. Towards the end, I should say. But
so this, God, that's so recent, Phil.
Yeah. And so that made a pause.
It's crushing.
But also, I needed a pause. As hard as that is to say. And at the great loss that came. For the past few months, going to the retreat, even though I had that plan before all this.
Sort of synchronistic.
Very synchronistic. It changed my meaning for the retreat.
Yeah, I bet.
But it also changed a lot of how I dove into things too. At a deeper level for coaching, at a deeper level of myself and the things.
And you're able to connect with one of the guys at the retreat who went through a similar experience, and that was super powerful for you.
Yes. Yes, there was a guy there who had a very similar story with his son, though. Very similar on all accounts, just happened years earlier. And for me, that let me let go some of that grief there, to let that out.
It was needed.
And that's one thing we need to do. We hold on to things so much.
Yep.
But one of the things too, I know in my life is I have these weird checkpoints that happen where like it says as soon as my life starts to go into a downturn, there's like all of a sudden uptake and change that needs to happen. And so I'll take action, sometimes drastic action, which isn't always needed, but I know a change needs to happen. And it's been slowly getting me to these points here. And so,
and oddly enough, it's supercharged your will to do men's work and coaching. And now we're mentoring under Connor, and we get to talk with him every week, which is cool. But yeah, you're getting after it. That darkness really pushed you forward.
Yeah.
Strangely.
A lot of new content came from it that I've been developing, though I haven't redeployed everything, and everything's kind of been a pause. When I'm back 1 month, everything will be right back, even stronger from where I was. More vulnerability too. I know that was one thing.
Or openness.
Yeah. More openness to things, but sharing my own vulnerability out there.
Yeah.
And that, it wasn't always the tough thing for me to do, but on a deeper level to be able to share and connect, I know that's a skill I've developed even more so in these past few months.
Yeah, all of us guys need to learn how to do that because we're suffering in silence. We don't need to. Yeah. We all think we have to be invulnerable. We just need to be open. And we're all hurting. We all just need to talk. And that's one of the things that the retreat blew open for us. Were you going to say something?
I guess what was your nephew's name?
Christopher.
I guess Christopher is is a punctuation mark in your story, and also part of the motivation for your mission to continue the development of the maturity of men in general in the community, because that who knows, teenagers go through so many things, as we all know. But one of the things that all of us have the experience of is being a confused teenager and not really having access to resources, not cognitive resources like watching videos, but or reading books, but being able to tap into somebody's nervous system who's been there and regulate. And what did you call it? Attunement.
Dewey calls it contact. Connor calls it contact, but attunement, yes. Comes from attachment theory.
Yeah. So the ability to attune when you're going through the confusion, because I want to go back to eventually your story about self-parenting and trying to figure out what your values are, and where those became, it sounds like those solidified a little bit more in this shamanistic journey that you went on in 2021. But the description of what you're trying to deliver to men is letting go of the default values that society gives them for their own personal values, whatever they are. And I keep coming back to this jarring transition that all of us have between like being a kid and then when you're 15 or 16, you're basically like, okay, take the SATs and figure out whether or not you're going to be a plumber, a mason,
doctor.
a doctor, a soldier. And some people do know from a very young age, which I admire those people who know who they are, and they just are like very clear eyed.
I'd say that's pretty rare though.
It is fairly rare. I remember all the handful of people who have had that clarity from an early age. But there's this, like, I think between 15 and 30, or in my case, maybe 15 and 40, I definitely felt a lot of almost like a free fall of just jumping into the space and taking a bunch of action. And if you're lucky, the consequences sort of guide you away from things that you're not as excited about and towards things that you are more excited about. But it feels like such a free fall because many of us don't have that that thing that you were alluding to at the beginning, the safe masculine energy to lean on, whether it's a father figure or a mother figure or a home that has balance in it. And so we're like, well, I don't really think the picket fence and the 2-car garage is for me, but what do I actually want? Maybe I do want to live in a cabin in the woods. Maybe I want to backpack across Eurasia for 2 years, whatever I want to do. And you're sort of cutting through the jungle on your own. And if you can have somebody to attune to who's gone through that free fall, it makes it a lot less scary. And if nothing else, for no other reason, then you're not by yourself anymore.
Mm. We do have to be careful though. Like one component when you were talking about, who and what do I want to be? Where do I want to go? We have almost two sides to that. One is our side that we have maybe influenced by society and the things that we're trying to run from that we haven't dealt with yet. So we have to be careful when and what we decide to do.
Speak more about that. What do you mean?
Yeah. And if we have values placed upon us, not to any detriment of parents, because there are a lot of great parents. My mom was a great parent. My dad was a good parent when I was little, but they of course have their own visions for their kids of what they want to do. And when you do have a good balance between mom and dad and that kind of thing, you can have a good idea of like for yourself to make a decision because you see the contrasts. But when you miss one side and it's more tipped to the other side, not saying it's the case in every way, but in my case, it was a lot more tipped towards my mom was concerned for where I wanted to go and do. Long time I wanted to go into the Army. Mm-hmm. I knew exactly what position. I loved military growing up, all that. But of course, and not any blame or anything there, but she wanted me to be safe, didn't want to go to the Army. Go get your college education, then you can decide. That kind of, bartering, I would say.
All three of us had the same message. And Josh was the only one that actually got to bust through. I had to come back and do the Coast Guard Auxiliary on the back end, but he got in right away.
So, yeah, so you're saying that we have to be careful, people project on us is what we're saying.
Yes.
People project on we project on each other, of course, because we're human. But I think there
is more to it.
Go.
Yeah, there's absolutely more to it. That was just one very specific example in one place where we find projection. We have our friends as well, and societal aims. You have to have 2 kids, white picket fence, all that.
Check the box.
We get all this stress and external forces pressing us down into this compressed thing and trying to say, you now need to fit into this box. Just as you were saying, you need to fit and conform when, well, how can I when I'm a circle? I can't, I don't fill in this whole box or I'm too big for this and or it's not where I want to go. Mm-hmm. And so that's one area is we have these external forces. And then the other force, from what I've been learning lately, is the internal force that is I don't even know how else to describe it, but more of a false white knight inside of ourselves.
Interesting.
And
What say more about that?
Yeah, we think he's the heroic. This is my vision.
Mhm.
I just want to live in the forest away from everybody. But what's the real reason of why he's driven there?
What's the need that needs to be met?
Because when we think about it in the shadow side, the Black Knight was never actually an evil force. He was the force that challenged the norm. He was the one that challenged your normal thinking.
Mm-hmm.
However you want to take that. And a lot of what Connor's work is to shed a light into that shadow. And then within that shadow, of course, there are components of our life, trauma and all that, but the golden parts,
The stuff we had to suppress that were good.
Right. Like suppressing
Like
your
your
visions.
desire to go to the military.
Right. Suppressing what you really wanted to do to help other people or this, but because it wasn't a good career choice, because it wasn't going to give you a lot of money, this and that, the wrong drivers, that's the white knight. Go here, go, I'm going to help save you and bring you back to the castle, even though that castle was the thing that was keeping you away from understanding the real world and yourself.
This sounds like the ego versus the self or the psyche in Jungian terms. Sounds like the ego is a white knight thinking it knows what's best for you.
Yeah.
To keep you safe.
Now, the thing is our ego, I don't believe, is evil by any means.
No, it's just trying to keep you
A lot
safe.
of people like to villainize.
No, we need an ego.
Yeah.
Healthy ego.
Yeah.
We need one.
I mean, the ego is there for good reason.
Yeah.
Try to protect.
We'd be psychotic
Yeah.
about it.
I mean, back in old times, it's trying to protect you from dangerous things, dangerous animals, all that. That's why we have that. And, to stay with the tribe, because the tribe does mean protection. It means more people, more protectors, and to not say things that we shouldn't, not set our own boundaries because we don't want to piss somebody off.
Group norms.
I'm going down a different route from the quote, nice guy aspects, but going back to the point of our true voice, we need to see is the balance between the dark knight and the white knight talking.
Like a yin and yang.
You cannot do one or the other. The dark knight is too, lack of a better word, aggressive into what he wants to do and will push aside everything else in your life to get there. The white knight is too passive. But if you combine the two,
integrate them.
Say, yes, I have responsibilities in my life. Yes, I should still need to make money. You have to survive these days. But I want to become a coach. So what are the things I can do to make sure I still, yes, continue to be able to live and thrive as the white knight wants, but not disown who I am? And that's where the combined forces we have to come into to say, once they can talk to each other on a level playing field,
I like that.
Shiva and Kali, the story between those two, the dark side of Kali in her bloodlust of killing demons knocked over Shiva. But Shiva had to learn how to become just as powerful, to become equal. I learned that from Robert Bly's Iron John.
Good book.
Where he talks a lot about the equals need to talk. And so that story, being able to have that combined conversation, that's your true. That's your truth.
I like that.
That's the refined truth for sure. You guys are all swimming in metaphor and heady concepts and abstractions. I'm like, there's the risk taker and there's the risk manager. And, I think it's, one of the things that's missing in, our society. I mean, this warrior concept that's been coming alive for the last 15 years, 20 years, thanks to whether it's Dan Millman or, Jocko or, any of the offshoots that we've been talking about all day today. It's like the healthy masculine, the person who's the creative, trying to take a risk and build something. Like the risk taker has been smothered most of the time, from many people's experiences. I am a big risk taker, and I have had no reserve shoot in most of my activities. And I had to learn to ask a question, a second order question. And I never had a plan B. Hell, I never had a plan A. I was just going. And what you talk about balance, and I don't think that it's ever a true balance. I think that there is teamwork.
Yeah.
And I think
Absolutely.
It's not static.
for some, I think it's like when people say the white knight and the black knight work together, it's like, I'm the black knight and I'll take the white knight shield. I'm like, oh, this works better for me.
Yeah, I like that lance. I'll take that.
Yeah, exactly. So now I've got some tools, and then I'm gonna still go and just run wild, and I've got I'm better resourced for that.
Yeah.
Now, it sounds like Phil's my alter ego, and he's like, I really want to go on this campaign, but I'm worried that my sword's not big enough. All right, you can borrow my sword.
Right.
You can borrow the Black Knight sword. It's like, it cuts everything in half.
Dope.
Now you got a little bit of risk. Now you're willing to take a risk.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there. That's still abstract, but I stayed in your world.
Well done, sir.
That is a great point. Because when I talk about balance, and that's something I need to clarify, it's not equal all the time. It's not 50-50. This is one of Dan Millman's rules of life, is the rule of balance. He has 12 universal rules, but the one that has stuck with me the most is balance. And the way he describes it is there is not a center point that the pendulum stays on. It must swing.
Interesting.
So your life over time, whether it's the dark night takes over a little bit more, or you need to push into the white knight more too, you have to also over push it for that pendulum to start moving. Sometimes it does get stuck in a certain area. Doesn't get stuck in the middle though. It will swing past the middle, and you can have elements in your life when you do have balance in that 50-50, but also you have to look at life as an overall. When you look back, when you measure it, the only way we can measure life, by the way, is by looking back. We cannot measure it going forward. You can only have a vision of the horizon. That's it. But we can only see and connect dots, Steve Jobs, by looking back of how we got there. But going to the balance, life overall is about that pendulum swinging. So if you are too much of a dark knight, start being a little overly nice, because in order for us to find that center, we have to know what the other side is like from where we are right now. And I've done that in my life for certain qualities, become a little over assertive, setting over boundaries, doing that on a little bit on purpose, so I could understand where my center was when that pendulum came back. But what happens is the pendulum swings a lot less further. It'll continue to swing, but it will start to find
Not so drastic
over time. And that's our purpose, I believe, in finding things, whether it's in relationships. When we first start out, a lot of times that pendulum is swinging in both different directions.
It's a fucking bell ringing.
And supporting each other, of course, one person's going to support the other. But as long as that pendulum swings back, over time, that balance will be found. And to me, I think that was a perfect point into saying that is life. We have to find the light if we're too dark of the dark night, or if we're too much into the light, we have to find our boundaries like I had to.
Maybe in the nice guy syndrome, being too much of the white knight.
Right.
I'm going to save everything. I'm going to caretake everybody. And to be confirmed, I'm a good human or something to this effect.
That is also the side of the warrior we need to find within ourselves, is to cut through and to push through our life. We cannot stay stagnant. While, yes, grounding, foundation, but we have to fight for who we are.
But you can come back to home base if you need to.
Even if it means we have to let go of other things in our life too.
So when you're working with guys, who is it part of your highest self or self-fathering or detaching? I use self in like the IFS terms. of that wisdom part to detach and notice the nights doing this and then make a decision.
Yes.
Is that how it kind of works?
You do have to become a bit of an observer. Yes.
Observer.
Yep.
Yeah. Realize the nights are
And
just
see.
running the show.
Yeah. That's a great area to get into too, is to say, I have to also take a step back, see what my nights are doing, see what parts of me are fighting
Mm-hmm.
to come out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the vision part of life too.
The vision part. There we go. Yeah.
Well, you said, I'm glad you said fight, and then you added let go, which I think that self-development begins with picking up skills that you don't have and qualities that you didn't know you contained. And then it becomes self-healing. After enough self-development, you just start reading the same things over and over again. You realize that you have to let go of parts of you that are holding on to fragmented identities from the past, other people's projections, and things that we don't need, things that, like you said, society have given us that don't apply to us. And that's I think I talk about being hungover from change, a lot of like continually letting go from things that I thought I had already let go of from a long time ago. And when you actually put the burden down, it frees up so much bandwidth for your creativity. And you already said that. I just wanted to drop in deeper when you said letting go. I wanted to highlight kind of what that means for people if you haven't experienced that or you are experiencing that. And what else did you say? You were talking about you talked about a lot of things. So are this is your new business, your Grounded Warrior program. Is that out now? Is that something that you have a launch date for?
So part of it has been out and deployed, but it was paused on the active development of content. The website's out there. You could go to thegroundedwarrior.com or groundedwarrior.net. Both will take you there. There are a few free resources available. You can apply for coaching. I am available for coaching, but more resources around short form videos. They'll come to Instagram again, those kind of components. And then also a deployment of a podcast is also coming in the next few months.
Which will be guests on, I hope.
Which will absolutely be guests on. So, but yeah, all that is going to come out very shortly. Now that I am going to start really getting the gears going after my own recovery, my own resolve here that has been reformed.
Yeah, that darkness really put the kibosh on it for a little bit. But you get to marinate in that.
There was a quote too. Once again, I can't remember the reference that I came across recently, that somebody says, as a warrior, you will experience pain, but suffering is the choice.
Optional.
And while you do need to feel that pain, you absolutely have to. You cannot ignore it. And it may take a little bit of time for that pain to reside, as for me it has. But to continue to suffer beyond that is your choice, or to continue to ignore it.
Stay stuck.
Yeah. And not saying that the pain will go away. It is just changing.
Mm-hmm. It'll come and it'll lessen, be more like smaller waves rather than a tsunami.
But you don't have to live with that pain in that level of hurt.
Yeah, I like to say it goes from an open wound to just like a battle scar. It's always there, but it reminds you of what you made it through.
But you have the choice. And I think a lot of people I have seen and known choose. Though they may not feel like they have a choice. You absolutely do.
Well, you're speaking truth because you just went through it. And that's a pretty crushing thing to have to go through. And you told me in depth how bad that was.
Well, Dan Millman has one of my favorite lines of all time, which is the injury is the training.
Love that.
Like you said, like, the darkness doesn't obscure your work. It feeds it. That's like why you're here. Everything you said today is about the journey of the American man to become a man. And it's, your nephew's very short, artificially shortened journey is like a highlight of why it's so important to be active in that process. And you're doing your best to show up for people like your nephew and you know, people like me who are maturing even in their 40s. And
Better late than never.
hey, it's a process. It's a process of discovery.
Always.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
It probably keeps going until you die, probably.
There is
That's
always
probably the
work.
point. Yeah.
I mean, you can always get to a good level and good balance.
And then get crushed by something.
But if you don't keep pulling yourself back to observe 10,000 foot and then also getting into the work, being the warrior, you'll lose yourself.
Yep.
You'll once again find yourself 5 years down the road. So if you are at that turning point now, continue. Push through. Don't give up. There is always more life, no matter where you are, to be had. And life truly, in my own purpose, is beautiful.
I like that.
Amen.
Closing thoughts? Sounds a good place to leave it. We'll link to everything we've talked about.
Yeah, well, obviously we'll link to Grounded Warrior and the music, and yeah, I just think that's a curious similarity. Every time I meet somebody from a different place, from a different time, how similar the experiences are. You start to you definitely see how, from probably Miles' perspective or Marcus Aurelius or anybody has the vision of 1,000 years, to see how, oh, this has happened before, it's happening again, and it will happen again. And we're all swimming in very similar water, and how many people can we help while we're here?
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, speaking of our synchronicities.
synchronicity.
No, it's been fortunate to meet both of you. And this has been great to be on here, and thank you.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
being on
pretty
here.
great.
You'll be
So-
back and we'll be on yours, and
Yeah.
we'll keep rolling.
On the path of the warrior.
On the path of warrior, the grounded
On
warrior.
to.
That's right. All right. We are out.